everybody, welcome back to my channel. Happy June. In today's video we are going to be going over the books I read in May. May was another good reading month for me. I finished 7 books and I DNF'd one, and I'm gonna go ahead and start with my DNF. So I DNF'd The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. Now, Robin Hood is one of my favorite legends. I love Robin Hood. And that started way back with the animated Fox from Disney. You know, I've always loved Robin Hood. I read a lot. I love to read Robin Hood retellings and things like that, as well as a classic story. I have somewhere around here. I got a new bookcase. Last month I rearranged all my books, so it's probably over there now. Yeah, it's over there. I have the Roger Lansing Green Robin Hood, and I've read that one. And when I was in college, I read most of the Howard Pyle Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, but I didn't finish it because I was at my friend's house and I was just reading it while I was there, and then when I left her house, I left it behind. So I was like, I don't know, in May, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of in the mood for Robin Hood. Why don't I just get Howard Pyle's copy from the library so I can go ahead and read that one, so I can say that I've read the 2 major ones, Roger Lansing Green and Howard Pyle. And so I put it on hold, but then 3 or 4 days passed before I got it, and by the time I did get it, I was like, okay, I was really in the mood for Robin Hood 4 days ago, and now I am less in the mood for Robin Hood. And so I did start to read it, and the thing is that I don't know if the copy that my friend had was just an abridged copy, or if I just skipped the prologue when I read her copy and started in chapter 1, which is honestly probably what I did. I don't know. I probably just skipped the prologue, because in the prologue of the Howard Pyle Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, it talks about how Robin Hood became an outlaw. Now, the way I've always known Robin Hood became an outlaw, and the way Roger Lansing Green describes it, is because he was poaching the king's deer and feeding the poor of his village. And so in the Roger Lansing Green, which is the copy I have, he is a lord. He's the Lord of Locksley, and he's been doing this for a really long time. And the sheriff of Nottingham and the king's men are trying to figure out who is stealing the king's deer and feeding the poor with them, and one of Robin's servants basically turns on him and turns him in, and that's how he ends up as an outlaw in the forest. In Howard Pyle's origin, which is in the prologue of The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, Robin is just this young 21-year-old guy on the way to a bow and arrow shooting match, and he gets into an argument with a guy in the woods, and it escalates, and he murders the guy, pretty much. Now it's sort of in self-defense because the guy shot at him first, but still, I mean, he murders him. And then he's like, oh no, I killed a guy, and worse, he's the sheriff's cousin, so I've got to go into hiding. So that's how he goes into the Howard Pyle. So after I read that, I was like, that's not my origin of Robin Hood. It's different. So I was a little put off by that. Anyways, I was like, you know what? I'm not even in the mood for Robin Hood anymore to begin with. I'm like, this is really putting me off, this origin story. So I just returned to the library. I was like, I'm not gonna finish it this time. But I've also been thinking lately about the myth of Robin Hood in general, as a Christian. And like I said, Robin Hood is one of my favorite mythological figures, so to speak. He's kind of or legendary figures, but when you think about it, I mean, he is legendary for stealing from the rich, stealing from the king to feed the poor. Oh, okay. I guess we've got some rain on the radar, but I guess it's messing with the lights. Anyway, what was I saying? Anyway, so if you think about it, Robin Hood is famous for not only breaking the law for being a criminal, but also breaking a 10 commandment, if we're looking at it from a Christian perspective, because one of the 10 commandments says, thou shalt not steal. And I'm like, wow, me as a Christian who tries to, follow Christ daily and have a deep relationship with Christ as my Lord and Savior, one of my favorite legendary figures is a thief. And I was like, is that a good thing? And I think it opens a broader discussion, right? Because, like, we can argue that he is a part of an unjust system, that he is, medieval England at this time, the rich and the king. He owned all the forest, he owned all the game, and his peasants were starving. And it wasn't even the king, because, in the Robin Hood tale, Richard the Lionhearted, who is the good king, he's off at war, and his throne has kind of been usurped by his younger brother, Prince John, who's really cruel. And so it's not even the real king. Like, there's an usurper in his place who's ruling the world who's ruling medieval England in kind of a wicked way, and Robin Hood is faithful to the true king of Richard the Lion, and he's taking, the king's deer in order to feed the poor who are suffering, and really, you can almost, if you really get into it, you can almost make like a great controversy kind of comparison, if you want to start comparing, like God to the good king, and Satan to the usurper who's, putting wickedness on the world, and like Christians as like, God's faithful supporters who are, helping people by like fighting against, the bad prince or whatever. And I mean, you could argue it like that, and I definitely see the relevance of that argument. But then at the same time, I'm like, but is that, just trying to excuse the fact that we, are enjoying this thing and celebrating this character who's kind of doing crime and, doing things that we know as Christians we're not supposed to do? And then it brings into other arguments, like if we're talking about, say, World War II, and lying is also against the Ten Commandments, but there were plenty of Christians in Europe who were lying to their government in order to hide Jews, when Jews were being persecuted and hunted. Christians like Corrie ten Boom is an important real life figure for that, or Schindler, who's Schindler's List, real life figure for that. Those are just examples. And Corrie ten Boom, if you read her autobiography, she talks about, like, her and her family, they straight up lied to the government, and they were forging papers, they were lying when they were hiding Jews. But she had a sister who was also hiding Jews in her house, who believed that lying was purely against the commandments, and she wasn't going to do it, and she did not lie. Like, when the Nazis came to her house, like, she had a cellar hidden under her table. And when the Nazis came to her house and they said specifically, "Are you hiding Jews?" She goes, "Yeah, they're under the table," because she made a vow that she was not going to break the Ten Commandments by lying. But when she did that, like, God honored her faithfulness to the Ten Commandments and her faithfulness to protecting the Jews. And so when she told the Germans, "Yeah, they're under the table," they looked at the table, which obviously was, like a wood table, they could see underneath it, and they weren't thinking like there was this hidden cellar down there. They just looked under the table and looked back at her, and they were like, "Don't make jokes," and then they left. And so, God honored her faithfulness and kept the Jews safe in that. And so it's like, it kind of brings up, these questions that we as Christians kind of have to wrestle with, because I don't believe that God punished Christians for lying during World War II when they were protecting Jews. I don't. But did maybe they have to reconcile that between themselves and God? Maybe. Like, anyway. This is a whole tangent, but I don't know. It kind of got me thinking about why I, as a Christian, kind of accept admiring a figure who, if you look at it from the surface, is just breaking God's law. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's something to think about. And I'm still thinking about it. I have not come to a conclusion of whether or not I really like Robin Hood or not, to be honest. Because I do think that there are a lot of, like, yeah, I don't know. I just haven't come to a conclusion, but I did start thinking about that. And I was like, I wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted to see what you guys thought. As Christians, how do you feel about those kind of deeper complexities that we face in the world and in stories and even in real life, as we know from World War II. So, yeah, that's just my ramble. And so, back to the books that I did finish in May. The first book that I finished in May was In Pursuit of Civility by Jen Turano. This is her newest release. It was released, I believe, in April. I gave it 4 stars. It was cute. It's the second book in the Merriweather Academy for Young Ladies series. I didn't like it as much as the first book. Annalise is the sister of the heroine of the first book, and she loves bugs and everything, and she's kind of quirky. And then our hero is Seth. He is a scientist, and his sister is a student at the school, and she gets into a lot of trouble and she ends up kind of running away on an adventure, and so they have to track her down together. There was a lot of there was something about the pacing that I didn't love about this book. Like, I mean, I finished this book at the beginning of May, so I have to really think back on it. And I finished this book on like May 1st because I read most of it in April, and then I just finished it on May 1st, which is why it's in the May wrap-up. But there was something about the pacing of this book. Like, a lot happened in a short amount of time that I think I just felt like it was just, I kind of wanted to slow down and to go deeper into things. I just felt like we were moving too fast and we were glossing over a lot of like character development in my mind. But I mean, that was just a really nitpicky thing because I still gave it 4 stars and I really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the first book in the series a little bit better because I felt like things got developed a little bit better, because I felt like we were just really, really moving through all the plot and antics in this book, and we didn't have a lot to slow down and to really develop things. And that's the only reason why I think I didn't give it 5 stars, because I really did enjoy it, and I still gave it 4 stars, but I think that was just the reason that it didn't become a 5-star for me. And also, I have a major fear of spiders, and this girl liked to study them, and I was like, ugh, every time a spider came up. And I wouldn't lower stars for that. I'm just pointing it out that I was like, ugh. Every time she talked about studying the spiders, I was like, oh no, please don't. So the next book that I finished was Fields of Glass by Alyssa Schwarz. This is the final book in the Prescott family romance. I started reading this like way back at the beginning of 2025, this series, and it's indie published. I had to get them from Amazon, and so I kind of just bought the series in bits and pieces over the year, and read them as I got them. So I finally finished the series. It was really good. I gave this one 4 stars too, and like, spoiler alert, I'm calling May the month of 4 stars because I gave almost everything this month 4 stars. But anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. It follows Micah Prescott, who is our final, him and his cousin, whose name I forget. Both of them are featured in this book. I want to say his name starts with like a C, his cousin. It's like a Camden, but that's not quite right. Caden, that's what it is. His name is Caden. So Micah and Caden, they're the last Prescott cousins whose stories we haven't got yet, and we follow them here. They both work on Micah's sheep farm, and so there's this girl named Grace, who she works for a big like financial firm in Denver, who's trying to buy Micah's ranch out in the country of Colorado. And she decides to basically drive down there and try to get him to sell in person. But then a flood comes and washes out the bridge, so she's kind of stranded. Not necessarily on his property. She ends up staying with his next door neighbor, but still, she's kind of stranded there, and they're forced to work with each other, even though they're like, eh. And so it's a bit of an enemies to lovers, but it's really cute. It's really sweet. It's got some really good spiritual content. I definitely recommend this series. This is the only series by Alyssa Schwarz that I have read, but I definitely want to look into more of her stuff because I really enjoyed it. And also support to indie authors. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars and it's good. So the third book that I read was a, I don't know, did I get it from NetGalley or was I on the launch team? I think I got it from NetGalley, which was Shipwrecked Faith by Danielle Grandinetti. I think this is my first Danielle Grandinetti read, but it was really good. I also gave it 4 stars because May was the month of 4-star reads, apparently. So it takes place around the 30s, I believe. Yeah, it's right around the market crash at the beginning of the Great Depression. And so there's this guy, and he lives in Chicago. I can't remember their names, and I don't have the book in front of me to refresh it because I think it was a Nick Elliott arc. So he lives in Chicago, and his cousin is in like the Irish mob, kind of, and he basically turns state's evidence on him and he runs away because he knows that the mob will be after him now. And while he's running away, he comes across this girl. Her name is Sadie. I think his name is Tiernan, but Tiernan might be his cousin's name. Anyway, so they end up on a ship instead of taking the train. They end up on a ship, and that ship gets in a storm on one of the Great Lakes. I forget which Great Lake they're on. I don't know my geography very well. Whatever Great Lake Chicago's on, that's what they're on. Anyway, so that ship sinks, and they end up washing ashore. And so, anyway, they end up at her family farm, and he's kind of like hiding out there because he doesn't know where to go next now that he's run from his cousin in Chicago. And she's trying to save her family farm. And yeah, that was a really bad explanation because a lot happens. It's a little bit suspenseful, but it's not overly suspenseful. Like I wouldn't put too many content warnings on it, like maybe a little bit. Like it's not, super light and fluffy, but it's not like terribly suspenseful, even though the plot itself is kind of suspenseful, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, they had a really sweet love story. I really enjoyed like the way that they both kind of had to grow spiritually. They both worry a lot, so there's not a lot of levity in the story, but it's still kind of sweet, and the author still managed to make it light in some places, even though it's a pretty heavy plot. But yeah, it was good overall, and I gave it 4 stars, and I know that I just did not explain that well at all, but so sorry about that, guys, but it's good. And it's the first book in a series, and so they follow the different sisters, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to learning the stories of the next 2 sisters. So the next book that I finished was From the Valley We Rise by Elizabeth Musser. And this one was, oh my goodness. I will put, warnings on this one. This one can be a tough read. I mean, it's very, very serious and very emotional. So this follows 3 main characters. First, we have Isabel. She is a member of the French resistance living in, what is the name of her town? Sisteron. So, she's a member of the French resistance living in Sisteron, and she is struggling with her role and what she has to do and all of this stuff. And then we follow a U.S. Army chaplain, Peter, who is carrying his own emotional scars while trying to encourage the men in his unit. And then we have 15-year-old Renee, who is Isabel's cousin. And at the beginning, he loses most of his family. His family is hiding a Jewish girl, and he loses most of his family and their farm. But he and the Jewish girl survive, and so they take off together. He's trying to find a place for her to be safe, and he wants to join the French resistance himself. And so it follows all 3 of them throughout Operation Dragoon, throughout 1944, and throughout the historic bombing of Sisteron. And I will tell you right now, there are 14 chapters, I counted, 14 chapters alone dedicated to the one day of bombing in Sisteron. Like, that's how like detailed this book is, and honestly how emotional, because like it takes 14 chapters just to get through one day of bombing and of everybody and everything that's happening. And oh wow, it is a heavy book, but it was also so good. Oh my goodness, like it was so heavy, and yet I just had to keep reading. You know what I'm saying? I did feel like after I finished this book, I was like, I'm gonna need like not a heavy book for like the next month. Like I can't handle another heavy book for like another month. Like this has zapped me completely, but it was still so good. And I gave it 4 stars as well. It was really good, but I do have to warn you guys, like, it is so heavy. Like, it'll hit ya. It'll hit ya. But I definitely do recommend it if you like World War II fiction. But if you don't like really realistic kind of war fiction or necessarily grittier things, then I would not recommend it. Like my mom, I would not recommend this to my mom because she doesn't really like heavy reads, and so I'd be like, it was really good, but you probably shouldn't read it because you wouldn't like it. So if you're not into like heavy things, don't read this one, but it is so good. But like I said, after I finished that one, I was like, I need just pure fluff for a while, and that's kind of what I got with the next few books. The next one I read was Pepper Basham's newest novel, which was A Brewed Awakening, and this is a enemies to lovers pub versus tea shop kind of book. So we have Daphne, who inherited her grandmother's tea shop, and she loves it, but it's kind of not doing great economically, and next door a new tenant moves in. His name is Finn. He's from England, and he has a young daughter, and they don't like each other at first because he thinks, you know, tea is princessy, and she thinks his rock music is too loud, and so they kind of get a little banter going on and a little kind of rivalry going on, a little sabotage of each other's businesses, but all in good fun. Like, neither of them are like super upset about it, and that's what I liked about it, because like sometimes when you get these like like I've read books that were enemies to lovers where they're kind of like messing with each other a little bit, but where it actually seems kind of mean and like it's really upsetting the other person. And so I didn't like that because I was like, they're just being actually malicious to each other. But here they're kind of playing tricks on each other's business, but they're also like talking about it with each other, and they're teasing each other about it, and like neither of them are taking it seriously. And that's the kind of enemies to lovers that I do like, because like there's nothing actually mean going on, you know? They're just kind of playing fun pranks on each other, and they're both enjoying it even though they argue, you know what I'm saying? And so like nobody's actually truly upset. And so I did enjoy it. I will say though, so I gave it 4 stars and I did really enjoy it. I will say though, I'll just talk about it in a minute. So let me first go on to my next read, which was Chelsea Bobulski's A Deal with a Debutante, and this is from Baker Bookhouse's new imprint that they came out with, Haven, which is their new clean fiction imprint. And so this one, it takes place in the Gilded Age in London, and we have an American heiress, Calliope Hart, who her mom wants her to marry an English aristocrat, so she. And this is the time when a lot of English aristocrats, their estates were failing, so they wanted the American heiresses for their money, but they also kind of looked down on their new money, and so it became kind of a social battlefield in a way. So Calliope doesn't really want to be there. It's her mom's idea. And then we have Edward Chase, who is an earl, and his estate is failing, and he meets Calliope, and he's basically like, I want you to be my heiress, give me 2 weeks to convince you, and if you don't want to, then I'll leave you alone. And so they kind of go on this 2-week adventure together, and it was really cute. I gave it 4 stars, and I look forward to reading more of this series later on. Okay, so the 7th book that I read was a reread book for me, and that was Positively Penelope by Pepper Basham. I was at the beach in the last week of May in Alabama with some friends, and I I just wanted a light beach read. It was really great to, this is one of my favorite books, and it was really great to read because, you know, we would spend time at the beach, we'd come back to the condo, I'd read, you know, a couple chapters, and then they'd be like, oh, let's play cards, and I'd be able to put it down and go play cards and pick it back up later. And, you know, for me, being able to reread a book is easier to do that than a book that I'm reading for the first time and I really want to know what's going to happen next. So it was really nice just to be able to put this book down and pick it up as I had time on my trip. But, so what I was going to say before is that reading this one soon after reading A Brewed Awakening, I have to say I found a lot of similarities. They both have a kind of grumpy sunshine trope going on with like a European grumpy guy and a Southern American sunshiny girl that becomes a point of their kind of bantering. Both guys have young 6-7-year-old daughters, and what else? There was just several other things that while reading it, I was like, there's just a lot of similarities to me. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it just, and I'm not going to go through them all, and I can't even remember them all. I listened them all out to my friend, who is also a big Pepper Basham fan, but I was like, I don't know, like, I'm just finding, I just found several similarities between them, and I was like, I don't know how to feel about it. But yeah, so that was just something that I found personally and that I wanted to point out, but it was still good. Positively Penelope is a 5-star read for me. It's one of my favorite books. I gave A Brewed Awakening 4 stars. I wouldn't say it was bad that they had similarities. It just felt like a lot of similarities to me, and I wanted to point that out. But yeah, so that is all 7 books that I read in May plus 1 DNF, and I will let you guys know how June goes. I will tell you right now that, so I will have a video in July of my June reading wrap up, but I will be gone all of August, and so after July you won't see me again until September, so just fair warning. But I'd love to know what you guys are reading. What is hitting the summer mood reading this year? What are you enjoying? Let me know in the comments.